Welcome to a special episode of the Neurodiversity Podcast. I'm Dave Morris, the show's executive producer, and it's a special preview of Emily Kircher-Morris's new book, Raising Twice Exceptional Children, a handbook for parents of neurodivergent gifted kids. So, Emily, you're on the opposite side of the interview desk again this time around for your second book. So tell me about why you chose to write a parenting book this time.
Well, as you know, my book for teachers came out back in August. And actually, during the pandemic, probably maybe May of 2020, a publishing company reached out to me, and they knew me through the podcast and a couple of other connections that we had. And they asked if I had ever considered writing a book for parents of twice exceptional kids, because there wasn't anything out there specifically for those parents. And so we kind of talked through it and decided that we would go for it. And that's kind of it's been an interesting process. The previous book, even though it was just released in August of 2021, was actually written and finished really before the pandemic, but it got pushed back because of everything. And so this one, writing it through the pandemic and going through the publishing process has been interesting. But I just know that I think it's been, just hard for parents over the last almost 2 years now that we've been dealing with all of this. And that's just for all parents, but especially parents of neurodivergent kids. There are just a lot of things that they've been having to deal with on top of just the regular day-to-day stuff. So I'm happy that this is a book, hopefully, that will have some resources and some ideas and some encouragement for parents who have twice exceptional kids at home.
So the first book was formatted more for a classroom type of a setting with some forms that people could use out of the book and just structured completely differently than this one. Tell me about the structure of this new book about parenting.
So I was kind of really thinking, and as I was brainstorming this book, I was trying to figure out, what are the things that I have parents asking me questions about, whether it's through the podcast, through our Facebook group, or in my office in my clinical setting. And I kind of just broke it down into pieces. So the first main section of the book really talks about how to conceptualize neurodiversity and understand twice exceptionality and understand how certain diagnoses, like autism or ADHD and dyslexia, how they might look different when they have that layer of cognitive ability or giftedness on top of them. And so that was something that I felt really needed to be explained and kind of talked through a little bit. So section 2 of the book is kind of what I call the Parent Toolkit. What are the things that we need to be able to do as parents as far as communicating and working together with our partner and perhaps co-parenting in order to really support our kids. So what are the things that we kind of need to do? And then the third section really dives into how we can support and coach our kids to be successful. I really take the standpoint that we want to be able to give them autonomy and agency and really help them feel motivated and driven to change. And we want to honor who they are without trying to change them. But we still need to give them some guidance. And I feel like there are some common themes of skills that kids need. So I kind of broke those down into what I decided were the 5 main skills that all twice exceptional kids need to be able to do and how parents can coach them through that. And then the last section of the book, the 4th section, talks about how to collaborate with the school. What are realistic expectations for what the school can and can't do for twice exceptional kids? How do you advocate for those things? What are some of the differences between a 504 and an IEP? What does that look like for 2E kids? And so hopefully it's kind of just a good global look at all of the things related to what a parent might need as they navigate the path of supporting their twice exceptional child.
One of the areas that I think is challenging for a parent because you have to sort of guide them and let them regulate themselves is emotional regulation. And that's part of the book, right?
Yeah. So the 5 different skills that I talk about in that 3rd section, which I feel like is really the meat of the book. That's the stuff that I feel like the parents are going to want probably more than anything. Emotional regulation is one. Self-advocacy is another. We have executive function skills, effective communication, and then self-directed motivation. So those are the 5 skills that I talk about. And emotional regulation is one, which I often feel like is one of the biggest things that parents deal with as they're trying to support their kids. So as I was kind of talking through this and kind of figuring out how to frame this, I really kind of like one of the tools that I came up with, which is called the I CAN method for emotional regulation. So it's an acronym. And it has 4 steps. So ICAN. And if you kind of coach
By the way, I knew you would do an acronym. I knew it. I knew you're just looking for a chance. And that's good because it's easy to remember.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's empowering and kids can understand it too. And so the 4 steps we have investigate. So basically really building that emotional literacy, understanding the triggers and investigating like what are the things that lead to emotional dysregulation and really getting a good understanding of those signs and those warnings and recognizing when that's all going to happen. So that's investigate. Step 2 is communicate. So how do I tell somebody that I'm feeling this way? How do I verbalize this? If I can't verbalize it, what's another way that I can talk to somebody about what's going on and what struggles I'm having? Step 3 is activate. So that's activating the coping skills, activating the routines or the procedures or whatever it is that will help me get through this emotional regulation. And then step 4 is navigate. So once you've kind of gotten through, you've activated those things and you get through it, and then you're going to kind of come back, debrief, talk about it, what worked, what didn't, and kind of make a plan for the next time. So investigate, communicate, activate, and navigate is the I CAN method for emotional regulation. And ultimately, that's something that I feel like I do with my clients all the time at the office. We talk about these things and we might really focus on just one particular piece of this. It's an ongoing process, and just talking to kids about it once isn't going to fix the problem necessarily. But if we have that framework on our minds and we're consistently integrating ideas and strategies to try to build each of those individual skills, kids will eventually kind of develop that skill and be able to do it more independently and understand how some of those strategies can help them just on a day in and day out basis.
So teaching is learning, parenting is learning. And I'm sure as you wrote this book, you were reminded of, some of the things that parents sometimes forget. And as you are doing the research, you're reminded maybe not only how you were parented as a child, but also how we parent our 3 kids. We have 3 2E kids ourselves. So were you reminded about some things? It was sort of a refresher course for you as you wrote this thing?
I think that recognizing how hard it is to step back as a parent and watching your kids struggle is a big one. I think I recognize and I really try to validate for parents in the book that parenting in general is not easy. Parenting a neurodivergent kid is like next level parenting. It's kind of like the next step that is nobody prepared you for. You didn't necessarily know, unless of course you are also neurodivergent yourself, which actually is a great pool of experience to use.
It's a big help.
Yeah, you can kind of you can empathize with your kids and you can kind of understand where they're coming from and what struggles they might be having, and it can really help you advocate for them. I mean, really, that's a big thing that happened for me, I think, is I grew up as a twice exceptional kid and wasn't always supported or understood. And so it's kind of why I do what I do, but it also really helps me with my own kids. But also, I recognize that I am definitely an imperfect parent and I have my moments. I mean, as all of us do. And I sometimes wonder like what people envision it must be like here at the house for us, like as though like we're always just this calm, serene thing, and I always know the right answer of what to do with my kids. And
well, podcasts are not unlike the social media effect, where you put everything up front that looks the best, and the rest of it you kind of like hide in the back. But what would you say? I mean, this is a pretty in-depth book, but if you could pick one thing out there to give a parent a piece of advice. Obviously, we want them to read the book and hear the whole body of work, but what one thing would make sense to them?
Just knowing that you don't have to have all the answers and really knowing that you know your child best. You are the expert on your child. And if you hear the world saying that they can't do certain things or they should be able to do other things, that you're allowed to take what works and leave the rest. You don't have to take all of those expectations and put them on yourself as a parent to try to make those things happen, or put them on your child to try to force them to be someone who they are not. And recognizing that we can take the strengths that our kids have and build from there, because whatever their trajectory is, whatever their development is, they'll get there. It might not be on the timeline that we expect or maybe even want, but they will. And we have to let them kind of have that journey on their own. And so the more that parents can do that and kind of, walk alongside their child, I think that that's probably just a really comfortable place to be without feeling like you're trying to always keep up or do what everybody else thinks that they should.
Parenting is tricky. I mean, a lot of parents want to be sort of the metaphorical guardrails for their kids. In reality, we kind of more need to be the painted lines, to use an analogy, right?
That's interesting. Where'd you hear that?
I just made it up right now.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, I'm good that way. So we have a new project that we're really excited about that's going to be out in the wild very soon. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, we've been working for quite a while on a really big project, and that is the Strategies for Supporting Twice Exceptional Students virtual course that's available for educators in school districts. And so that is hopefully going to be out there in the world very soon. And then beyond that, I think we're going to also just be expanding the Neurodiversity University. And I think our next step is really to get some courses out there for parents, some of which will be available and for free. I have some really cool ideas about taking some of these concepts like the I CAN method for emotional regulation and trying to convert that into like a course that parents and kids could walk through together. They could watch some videos together and have some little activities that they could do to expand on it and help them kind of figure out some ways that they can build that skill. And so a lot of other things too, but just helping parents and kids who are neurodivergent learn to kind of navigate this world and work together. So I'm excited for all of those things to come about.
So through all this pandemic, everything has been, schedules have been off, release dates have been changed.
Yes,
but
frequently.
Now this book is released, right? It's out in the wild.
That's what I hear. I have not actually seen it yet, but I do have photographic evidence that other people have received it. So we're in the middle of a snowstorm here in St. Louis.
The author has not received her copy of the book, but people in the wild have.
Yes.
I keep saying wild. I guess that's what
I know. I like to say that. That's what I always say too. I always like, and if you get the book and if you order it and you get it and you want to send a picture, that would be awesome. I would love, love, love that. And if you give me permission to share it on social media, I will. But there's nothing cooler than seeing other people having that work like in their hands and appreciating it. That's kind of what it's all about.
Oh, she'll put it out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Emily Kircher-Morris. The new book is called Raising Twice Exceptional Children, a handbook for parents of neurodivergent gifted kids. Thank you for letting me interview you. Now you get back behind the mic for the next episode, okay?
Yes, sure will.